So I've been able to work out with the RAD One V2 for a while now because RAD Global sent it to me. They wanted me to do a review, but I'm not really in that space anymore. I used to use my background in patent law and science to do objective technical reviews of product. But now I'm in this AI space. So I told them I'd focus on how individuals could just potentially look up and do their own research without any sort of bias, because we know that that's kind of the toughest part. Like if I go and search reviews, I've got as many reviews as possible, Jake Fit French, Sonny Webster, and I don't know their background, I don't know their bias, I don't know their preferences, and hey, look, there's me. And how does that help me buy unless I'm just fully 100% trusting the individual's opinion? And so I came up with a couple ways. Well, actually, before we get into this one, let's look at this one. Now, one thing that sucks about purely online retail is that we can't get it in hand. We're kind of at the mercy of just seeing what kind of images that they have. And I will say RAD does better than a lot of people of giving as many perspectives on the product as possible. Is it aesthetically pleasing? Do I like the way it looks? But I still, getting it and just kind of being able to turn it myself is something that I like to do. So we come to what I love about AI in this space is open source. We have Tencent's Hyunyun 3D2. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And what it is a diffusion model. It's able to take a 2D image, add a bunch of dimensionality to it, add textures, add paint, and then it spits out a 3D image. It's not perfect because it's inferring a lot from a 2D image. And that's exactly what I did with just taking a screenshot of the RAD Global RAD One V2. And now I can kind of tilt it, look at it, and you can see how kind of cool it is. The fact that this looks like a right shoe because this is the outside. So it has to infer, first of all, it's a shoe. The shape's going to be asymmetrical. So it's not going to just copy and paste and flip over. You can see here that the interior is different than the exterior. Now, is it exact? Well, it doesn't know what's on the other side. So again, it's inferring a lot from here. But for me, it's enough to kind of just spin this sucker around and be like, that's a pretty cool shoe. And if we hold them up, now this isn't the exact same model, but you can see the exterior. I mean, that's pretty close. Now, that's the exterior. Now the interior, it doesn't have the waves on the interior, but how's it going to know that? For me, is this perfect? No, but it's a pretty cool thing. And I'll put links in the description to all this. I don't have this running locally. This is up on Hugging Face, so you can actually just play around with it yourself. Next, here, my own personal chatbot. Now, I'll use Grok and kind of show how to do some sort of like research yourself. But for me, if I'm working with any sort of sensitive data or something I don't want, like OpenAI or Grok or anyone, like the danger of it being trained on my data and then being used as an output for someone else, I'll run it locally. I know a lot of people aren't going to be able to do that, but kind of just want to show you art of the possible here. So for me, I have what's called a retrieval augmented generation architecture built on top of the latest and greatest DeepSeek model, which is this advanced reasoning model that is rivaling a lot of the $200 a month models that OpenAI has out there, especially the O1 model. So, I mean, that's a lot. Just know that the brains behind being able to research is forthcoming, and it's getting very, very good to help us as individuals get better about finding what our preferences are married with the product. So I can put in a bunch of different files. Like for me, I have, of course, the benefit of having my YouTube channel and some legacy information. One of them being kind of here's the transcript from the YouTube video I did. And then how do we remove bias? Having as many perspectives as possible and finding kind of like the common denominators of what everything in all these reviews have. So here I have I pulled up like Tom's Guide. I found just some random, because this is just an example. This isn't exactly what I did. And found as many different kind of Reddit, and then being able to web scrape all of that information. And so I put it into here, and now I've got this repository that becomes the context and information that my chatbot can rely upon. Now, if I go here, this one, I have a built-in mind map. I can kind of see the breakdown of exactly what this is. It's got the swell foam technology. I think that here, this was from the previous model and this model. And this one actually is a little denser from what I can tell. And I'll show kind of just at least one aspect of my experience with the shoe that has been better than the other shoe. So you got the swell foam midsole, super light, springy, eco-friendly. So a lot of the preferences, if you're someone that is definitely someone like climate sensitive and that matters to you, or if you want to buy from a smaller company that RAD is versus like a Nike, then some of that would be something that would check the boxes for you that a reviewer wouldn't necessarily probably cover. Because that's the other aspect of reviewing. They don't really cover every single checkbox on every individual's list because it is their preference. What do they look for? So you got the rad wave patterns, you got the traction pattern, stability, and power mesh. For me, it's very comfortable. Everything here that I'm a big fan of, the swell foam. My preference as I've gotten older has been to focus more on the cardio than kind of what I would call the ego lifting. Not saying that everybody that lifts heavy is an ego lifter. It's just that, you know, when I reviewed this a few years ago, I was a bit younger. I'm 35 going on 36. I don't really need to be squatting 500 or deadlifting 600 anymore. The compression on the spine doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So to have a shoe that can at least do 405, that is something that I would like. Now that's kind of what I want to touch on, is that aspect of it. So here, if I open up this mind map, one of the things that I had an issue with prior with the RAD One version 1 was performance under 275 was great. Anything over, it really started to break down. I don't really have that problem. So this is the one aspect. Here's me squatting 405. You'll just have to take my word for it. And the compression on the swell foam for me, and I apologize for the flickering, it's just that the garage lights in my garage gym, but you can see as I squat down, do another one, a lot less compression than in the previous model. So I'm comfortable doing 405. When I'm deadlifting, I'm not too worried about it. For me, the 405, the back squat's a little more important just because of the stability. I got this thing sitting on my back, and I would like just make sure I'm not getting a lot of ankle movement and I get a good foundation. But also, I'm not really going to be doing that much ever in a workout where I drop that and go run. So for me, the balance is there for this shoe being my shoe for at least the first half of 2025. Now, you don't have this. You don't have this running. What else can you do? I'm a big fan of Grok. The ability for it to pull from its data set. Let me switch over. The tweets, the active, like this is the most up-to-date information that I generally can rely upon to at least get, you know, what kind of resources, because not only does Grok give you the output, it also is great at giving you the relevant web pages. And then in each point, so I asked, give me a detailed review of RAD One V2. Please provide pros and cons. Further, as someone who wants to lift around 405-pound squat, as I've said, and prioritize running in my cross-training workouts, is this a good shoe? Now, it's kind of a leading question. It's not going out in the broad market, because if you ask these models, hey, just give me a good shoe, in context, so if like I go back here, what it's doing is it's finding the most relevant based on the information presented, and it can kind of, it has trouble with bias. So you have to, what's called prompt engineering, focus as much within the prompt as possible to get the best output. Now, this isn't, I would say, best practices of prompt engineering, but again, this is just an example and something that you can go down the rabbit hole and figure out. Now, great. RAD One V2, swell foam, bio EVA midsole, durability, aesthetics is noted for improved look. I would agree. Stability for lifting. Despite the increased cushioning, the shoe maintains good stability for lifting thanks to the midsole design and TPU heel clip. Initial stiffness, sure, you got to break down that foam. I experienced that, but not as stiff as like a Metcon out of the box or even the Tier CX2 that I also was sent. Weight slightly heavier. I agree. Running performance, while better than the original, it might not match up to dedicated running shoes. Yeah, this is not a dedicated running shoe, and you would never use a dedicated running shoe to lift heavy. This is a great balance. Suitability for your needs for lifting around 405-pound squats, RAD One should suffice. I agree. The midsole has been engineered to support heavy lifting without excessive compression. Running has been improved for running. I do think it's better than its predecessor for that. And then conclusion, sure. Now, if I want to double click into any of this, I can go and see what the independent. I was the world's first among to try the RAD One V2. I always get a little weary of those because it's like, okay, how much testing did you actually do? And you can also see here's the Tom's guide and so on and so forth. So the whole point of utilizing artificial intelligence is to take anything that is built for the broader market. So like my reviews were to be objective, so someone could take it and kind of try to adapt it without imputing any sort of bias in there. But that's very tough. With AI, being able to train it, you're not necessarily going to fine tune it specific to you, but to give it more information through the prompt that you're looking for, it can then take that information, draw correlations, look for context, and give you a personalized recommendation. That's what we're seeing with artificial intelligence, especially for the customer experience, personalization. And this experiment I kind of ran was a great way. And I did this prior to even RAD Global sending this out to me, knowing kind of like, wow, this is one of the shoes I'm looking for because of, again, my preference. I'm going to lift lighter, relatively lighter, and I'm going to run more. So if you have any suggestions, how are you using artificial intelligence, or perhaps what I'm thinking about doing is consolidating a lot of information and automating some sort of newsletter to send out, especially like in the fitness space where I was working in on the channel prior, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your ideas.